Savage He-Man, Ultra Evil-lyn, Ultra Skeletor, and Supreme Sorcerers explained. Rest easy, folks. He-Man is back again with a bang. It seems like all the infuriated fans finally made an impact on Kevin Smith, who made the changes that were necessary for the second season of Masters of the Universe Revelation. If the first season was all about emasculating He-Man and focusing on Teela as the protagonist, the second season tries its best to compensate for the damage done. Is it a perfect effort this time? Well, not quite. However, the second season is still a decent series that brings you a glimpse of the mighty He-Man, albeit in a very different form. The focus this time is on various characters, Evil-lyn's character development, and the creators dive deep into the sea of metaphysical philosophies through the storytelling. The plot is more complex this time around, and the second part of the series will certainly remind you of just how powerful He-Man used to be in his glorious days. In this video, we will take you through the entire series and try to analyze the little things that can pave the way for the next season. We have explained the ending as well, and here is an insight into all that went right and wrong in Season 2 of Masters of the Universe Revelation.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Cleaved in Twain, Episode 1. The second season begins with a brief flashback to the past. We see Teela as a baby, and her mother is preparing to step into her new life as the Sorceress. However, that requires her to sever all emotional ties with her baby, and Man-at-Arms is given the responsibility to care for her. They bid a teary goodbye as the Sorceress embraces her life as the protector of magic. She leaves a magical mark on her daughter, suggesting that she could use it when the need arises. Now, we are back to the present day, and the first surprise awaits us. He-Man is not dead as it was portrayed in the first season. He is severely injured, and he is cornered by a powerful Skeletor who now has the power of the sword to make him invincible. The others, like Teela, Andra, and Man-at-Arms, are helpless as Skeletor prepares to kill his mortal enemy. Prince Adam gets a momentary reprieve when his battle cat Cringer distracts Evil-lyn and Skeletor, but it is not enough for them to escape. The Sorceress springs into action and uses the last bits of her magical powers to stop Skeletor from killing Prince Adam. She teleports Teela, Andra, Adam, and Cringer using her powers and sends them back to the royal palace. Man-at-Arms, however, is stopped from escaping by Evil-lyn, and he watches in horror as Skeletor plunges his sword into the Sorceress, killing her. He breaks down at the loss of his trusted partner, and Skeletor has him locked up in the dungeons. Evil-lyn is made the new Sorceress, and she seems to be taken aback by the sudden development. Back at the royal palace, Adam's wound seems fatal, but Teela is able to heal him using her magic. It seems like she has a natural ability that she was unaware of, and tapping into these powers could accomplish miracles. They encounter Clampchamp and Fisto, the brave defenders of the city who have evacuated King Randor, Queen Marlena, and most of the citizens to safety. But it doesn't take long for Skeletor to track them down, and he uses his magic to turn everyone into undead skeletal minions. Even Fisto and Clampchamp are infected, and Teela and Andra manage to destroy them. Time is running out for the heroes as Skeletor and his undead army storm into the castle. Skeletor shows them just how godly and powerful he has become by banishing the souls of Fisto and Clampchamp to Subternia. It seems like he can control just about anything, but there is one thing he is yet to discover. Prince Adam reveals that the Sword of Power was no more than a conduit for his powers, and the tri-ability lay in him all along. He calls upon the transformation even without the sword, and we get to see a savage form of He-Man. He is a giant muscular form of He-Man, and he has no control over his raw power, much like the Hulk. Reason and Blood, Episode 2. An animalistic form of He-Man viciously attacks Skeletor, who is clearly taken aback by the raw power of this beastly figure. With a few grunts and growls, Savage He-Man shows just how powerful he is by single-handedly taking down an entire army of undead men. He engages Skeletor in an intense battle, and the two tear the city apart with their brutal fighting. However, Skeletor is still too powerful, and it seems like Savage He-Man does not have much to substitute for brains. He attacks Skeletor again and again, but the latter keeps evading his attacks and fights back. Skeletor also reawakens the fallen members of his undead army, and Teela realizes that they cannot hold ground much longer. Just as Skeletor is about to land a lethal blow on Savage He-Man, she uses her magical powers one more time. She casts the same teleportation spell that the Sorceress used before, and they all are transported to the Mystic Mountains. Skeletor is left fuming once again because he lost the opportunity to finish off his arch rival. He takes it all out on Evil-lyn, and we observe a rather abusive relationship between them. Skeletor is too blinded by the lust for power. power to recognize the contributions of his minions, and he is now obsessed over the power that allowed Prince Adam to transform into Savage He-Man even without the sword. He goes on to interrogate Man-at-Arms in the dungeons, who clarifies the difference between Skeletor and Prince Adam. He says that Adam is a true hero because even after having such extreme powers, he would only choose to exercise them when others needed him. Skeletor, on the other hand, has never given up the power ever since he came to possess it. Meanwhile, Teela, Andra, and Cringer are struggling to control the animalistic He-Man. Teela tries to make him realize his real self, but the sheer mention of his father makes him infuriated. He runs off, slaughters an animal, and then heads straight for the camp set up by the royal guards of King Randor. It looks like all his rage is directed towards his father, who never appreciated him without knowing his secret identity. After a brief fight with the guards where they were finding it extremely difficult to contain Savage He-Man, King Randor recognizes the eyes of his son. He walks towards him, saying how he regrets not telling him how proud he was of his son. He appreciates the restraint exercised by Prince Adam, and the emotional words seem to have an impact on Savage He-Man. He finally transforms back into Adam, and there is a happy reunion in the family. On the other hand, Evil-lyn is going through a dilemma of her own. She is treated with disdain by Skeletor, and that has led to an urge in her to be recognized and appreciated. Beastman seems to be her only well-wisher, and he advises her to take control because now that she is the sorceress, her power is no less than that of Skeletor's.
Let the power return!
The Gutter Rat, Episode 3. King Randor is thankful for the second chance that life gave him with his son, and the Queen is delighted to see him after dealing with the sorrow of his death. Adam spends some time with his mother, and he learns that the news of his death brought a lot of problems between the King and the Queen. King Randor blamed her for hiding the secret alter ego of her son, and she started to resent him for being blamed. Dealing with the grief of losing a child took a heavy toll on them, and she was almost about to leave him. Andra is enlisted as a lieutenant in the Royal Guard, which fulfills her wish of living with them all because she always longed to have a family. Back at the villain's camp, the discord between Skeletor and Evil-lyn has worsened. He allows her a glimpse of the universe, but she is stunned to discover that all Skeletor plans to do with such unlimited powers is kill He-Man. He cannot seem to be able to think beyond his narrow ambitions, and this makes her even more nihilistic. She also has a meeting with the imprisoned Man-at-Arms, who fuels her urge to rebel by suggesting that they all pity her down here in the dungeons. They can see how she is treated like garbage, and it is unfortunate that Skeletor doesn't value his most trusted comrade. Beastman seems to be the only friend she has got out there, and he confronts her yet again and asks her to break free of the shackles. We are taken for a throwback journey to Evil-lyn's past life that shows why she is indebted to Skeletor. She was born into poverty, and her parents were about to eat her on her 5th birthday out of hunger. She managed to escape and lived in the sewers for many years. She would steal to survive, and during one such heist, she discovered her magical powers. Just as she was cornered, Skeletor appeared out of nowhere and rescued her. It is because of him that she got a new life, and this is why she owes him a lot. However, now she has been abused and tormented enough to outlive the favor, and she finally realizes that she has to tap into her powers and free everyone living under the shackles of Skeletor. Meanwhile, Prince Adam and Teela have a heartfelt conversation where the former apologizes to her for keeping the identity of her mother a secret. They seem to have made peace with their old secrets, and they prepare for the threats that are about to come. Speaking of threats, Evil-lyn seduces Skeletor and tricks him to temporarily renounce his powers to sleep with her. Things men do in the hopes of getting laid. Using the perfect opportunity, she grabs the Sword of Power for herself. She calls upon the transformation and changes into Evil-lyn, who intends to end all the suffering by simply destroying the universe as we know it. The royal family plans to defeat her, and the only feasible option seems to be Teela taking up her role as the new sorceress. They end up with an unexpected ally when Skeletor joins their mission because he too is threatened by what is about to happen. We never thought we would live to see this day when He-Man and Skeletor will fight side by side, but it all builds up to that possibility. Hope for a Destination, Episode 4. It is time for a serious showdown as Evil-lyn is all set to exterminate the entire universe. While she was examining the universe, she witnessed the death of the god Zor at the beginning of time. This further fueled her cynical and nihilistic nature, and even Beastman is unable to talk her out of it. Teela uses her magical abilities to send a telepathic message to the people of Eternia. Just like the sorceress could do, Adam and Skeletor plan to stop Evil-lyn, and they decide to head to Grayskull for the mission. They arrive at Grayskull and they fight Evil-lyn to distract her as Teela and Andra sneak in through the castle's sewer systems. They take down several minions of Skeletor, now working for Evil-lyn, such as Webstore, Spikor, Goatman, Blade, Pigboy, and Clawful. Man-at-Arms offers them some crucial help in this fight, and we learn that he was aware of Teela's awakening as someone who could now use her previously untapped magical powers. He further encourages her to take up the role of her mother and become the new sorceress. On the other hand, King Radnor and Queen Marlena finally seem to put their differences behind them. They watch fascinatedly as the people of Eternia arrive, proving that Teela was successful in her efforts. Meanwhile, back in Grayskull, an interaction with the spirit of the sorceress gives a few insights to Teela. She learns that she would have to sacrifice her former life if she chooses to take up this new role. Prince Adam and Skeletor fail to hold against the powers of Godlin for much longer, and Panther is killed in the process. She lashes out at Skeletor for all the mistreatment over the years, and she prepares for the final destruction in the universe that would bring everything to the way she likes it, non-existent. She also summons Scareglow and his army to fight the approaching forces of Eternia. The final battle seems to be inevitable, and it will determine the fate of the universe.
What? But why?
Come with everything you see here, Episode 5. If the entire series is about the battles and character conflicts, the season finale is a philosophical awakening in many ways. It starts off with the battle commencing between Eternia's forces and Scareglow's army. Teela goes through with the transformation, but she makes it pretty clear that she will not give up on her relationships to take up the new role. She infers that her loved ones are her biggest strength, and she shouldn't be abandoning them for her life as the sorceress. She finally reconciles with her mother, abandons all her grudges against her, and the transition seems to be completed thereon. However,
we have the power.
The battle situation keeps getting worse because Godlin is simply too powerful to be dealt with. She revives the dead to fight for her, but even Orko is revived as a result. Now he uses his magical powers to defeat Scareglow, and the unthinkable happens. The Sword of Power is freed from Evil-lyn, and Adam is back to the role he dons best: He-Man in his good old glory. However, losing the sword is not an end to the powers of Evil-lyn. She has obtained the powers of the Celestial Apex, and Teela takes her on in a final duel. Skeletor believes that the battle is doomed and they are all set to lose. He goes back to his narrow-minded ways and decides to kill He-Man before it is all over. They engage in a fierce fight, and Teela tries other ways to reason with Godlin. She makes her aware of some facts about the universe that she was oblivious to. For instance, Zoar did die, but she was reborn, and the universe always has a way of continuing through change. It is far more positive than how Godlin perceived it, and this realization hits her. She decides to relinquish her powers and takes up a life of peace. Order is restored once again, and even Skeletor is dismissed after the fight. He is flung into the distance and we see him disappear, at least for the time being. Scareglow's army is banished to Subternia, and Orko is stopped from returning to the afterlife.
Not this time.
Evil-lyn chooses a very different life for herself and travels to Trolla to abandon her magic staff. With time, Andra is made the new man-at-arms, and everything is finally brought back to normal. This season ends with a glimpse of Skeletor in the company of some surprising allies. He heads to the Snake Mountains, and he is enraged at Triclops and the others who abandoned him. Just as he tries to destroy the motherboard, he realizes that it is living and it starts to assimilate Skeletor. The Horde insignia is clearly seen, and it is not tough to guess the next threat that He-Man and his friends will have to deal with.
Oh, I'm real, all right. Because when you raised the dead, you raised me too.
A deeper look into the characters. This series does a lot of character development and transformations, and it is almost tough to keep track of who is embracing their good side when. Let us take a quick look at some of the crucial characters in the show and how they spanned out. For starters, Teela's journey certainly got a lot more complicated. Right from the first episode, it is hinted that she has what it takes to exercise her magical powers. But finally, it all came down to her new role as the sorceress. We love the backstories for some of the popular characters of the franchise. For instance, the troubled childhood of Evil-lyn makes a lot of sense and explains some of her behavior in the past. She does have a soft side, and we have previously seen glimpses of it. When she finally gives up her powers and chooses a life of peace, it shows that she was always a true soul deep within. Her conflicting personality was well explored, and this character did have a lot of potential to be important. They certainly spared a lot more time on Prince Adam this time around. He transforms into Savage He-Man, the uncontrollable raw powerhouse that smashes things around without any self-control. We are almost tempted to call him the Hulk. He-Man because of the striking resemblance. However, what is more important is how they suggest that the real power was always within Prince Adam himself. The sword was simply a conduit, and it shows that there was always more to this goofy character even without him transforming to his alter ego. He is heroic enough, and finally the makers had to concede to the demands of the fan. Some characters were really underplayed, and we hardly saw much of Man-at-Arms and Andra this time around. The former certainly deserved more screen time than being locked up in a cell for over 3 episodes.
The power.
Some clear misses in the story. There are a few plot holes as well, and we cannot just look past those. Skeletor's nature seems questionable at times, and his inability to kill his enemies often causes major problems. He got a chance to slaughter Man-at-Arms, but chose to imprison him instead. He does suggest later that he respects Man-at-Arms and wants him to die a hero's death, but since when have we known Skeletor to be so gallant and righteous? He also had a few chances to kill Adam and blew them all either with his silly talk or his unnecessary antics. Later, when he fights alongside He-Man, he suddenly goes back to his old narrow-minded goals and tries to kill him before the universe is destroyed. If that makes little sense, isn't it even more unreasonable that He-Man is shocked at his betrayal? Wasn't this the same villain who wanted to kill He-Man all his life? What's so surprising about it? One thing that was kept a mystery towards the end of the episodes is the fate of Scareglow and Beastman. Even though we assume that Scareglow is banished to Subternia, it has never been revealed clearly. Beastman just disappears after being thrown off the castle's bridge by Cringer. Evil-lyn never looks for her trusted friend after she is restored to sanity. There is a glaring discrepancy with the first part, where it was suggested that Teela and Andra might be a thing. However, this time around we see Teela and Adam holding hands at the end of Season 2, and they speak about how they need each other. All the blushing and lovey-dovey talk implies that they might be the new relationship to talk about. What the ending suggests. Like we said before, the ending of the series doesn't leave much to suspense. Skeletor is back to the forces of Hordak, as the insignia suggests. However, it wasn't clear why He-Man didn't strip Skeletor of his powers before chucking him out. If he could give him the extra power while fighting together, it would make sense if he could also take them away as well. Nevertheless, Skeletor continues to exist, and with some new villains, he could well be a threat for Eternia and He-Man one more time.
I'm proud of you.
Our take on Season 2. This might not be an epic addition to the franchise, but it certainly does some serious damage control after the disastrous first season. There were accusations that the focus was a bit too much on Teela, but they have shifted the focus to multiple characters this time around. We have been impressed by Lena Headey's impersonation of the dramatic Evil-lyn, and she is clearly the best among the voice actors, capturing the complications of the role.
Simple, predictable little man.
Teela also gets a prominent arc, but there are some subtle changes to suggest that she is not taking the center stage any longer. Skeletor probably gets the least character development, and there are times when you would feel that the character is more of a parody of the aimless villains of the 80s. He knows no more than ending He-Man, and even with unchecked powers, his aspirations are restricted. The powerful form of Skeletor is pretty cool, but the character could have had a bit more spice. Credit is due for Mark Hamill for doing a brilliant job portraying the skull-faced antagonist. There has been some philosophical awakening in the series, which comes as a surprise. The realizations about the vastness of the universe and the pointlessness of narrow conflicts are some of the things that are thought-provoking. Evil-lyn's realization towards the end and her embracing a life of peace is also quite different from what we usually see from animated show villains. We have been thoroughly entertained by some epic battles, which were missing in the first season. The first showdown between Skeletor and Savage He-Man promises some jaw-dropping action, and even the final battle has certain flair to it. Overall, it would be unfair to say that the new episodes are trashy. After all, the stories were quite good, and the characters turned out to be the way we liked them for the most part of it. Of course, we were intrigued by the new Savage He-Man and his powers. It is a good thing that he didn't have such powers from the beginning, because the show would have been over in a single episode, with him crushing all the enemies in one go.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.
Let the power return.